Betty, you and Tony, I commend you both. You guys are so very much involved in Canby and so many things, and I really appreciate all that you guys do for Canby in so many different areas. So thank you for taking this on your plate, which I know is already very full with things that you do, but thank you for coming and letting us know about this and keeping it being talked about. So we definitely need that, and this is a good forum for it, so thank you.
I would like to compliment Angela Baker. She is the chair of the Imagination Library. She is the beginning breath of it. She looked into it, she went and sought it out, and brought it to our foundation board and said, this is something we need to do. And so I thank Angela for all she's doing for this. But thank you. Any of you who have little children, grandkids, sign them up, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty.
I got a little,
Thank you, Betty.
little
And I
grandboy.
think you deserve a spontaneous round.
The kiddos love getting mail too, so this is awesome.
And the kids do like getting
Kids
love to get mail.
We can
so.
explain what that means.
Yeah. This is how mail works, kids. All right. The other card I have is for a topic later in the meeting, so we'll come back to that. We'll move into mayor's business and liaison reports. I don't have much on the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee front. Bylaws should be wrapped up, and I've asked that they get presented in their current state, which is much to the chagrin of a few mayors, not quite done, but needs to be dialogued. And so once that gets approved by C4, the coordinating committee, you all get to have input and decide whether or not those bylaws are appropriate. We've also are having, moving forward on some things regarding the conversation of affordable housing or the affordability of housing. So what that's currently looking like is that there's a housing needs study that's going to be looked at. Both Wilsonville and Milwaukee have already completed a housing needs study. So the county is looking at a group effort to discuss what is the needs across the county, and I know that's something that I think cities are to do, or I don't know if it's a requirement, Rick, or it's a very strongly encouraged thing to do a housing needs study like every 10 years or so. They tend to be very expensive to do. I don't know when our last one was done.
If I remember right, it was done in 2000, either 2008 or 2010, and they're typically done every 10 years, yes.
Okay. So the county's looking to take on the bulk of the load, and then asking cities to maybe contribute financially to help look at a whole county study, and then using those results compared to Wilsonville's and Milwaukee's study to determine, do we have an affordability issue, and if it's an affordability issue, what might be some things done, or is it an affordable housing piece that needs to be looked at, and then where would those pockets fall? Like we were talking earlier tonight, those potential pockets tend to fall along in cities that have county services already. And so, that's what we're anticipating, at least that study will do. So I'll keep you posted on that. And that's going to be a huge conversation topic at the C4 retreat. That's going to be in August. So I will keep you posted on that. Transportation front for Clackamas County, sounds like the state legislators have definitely taken everything, the kitchen sink, the baby, the bathwater, and they're throwing it all into transportation in terms of where funding would come from to generate, I think, $8.6 billion over 10 years to do and address road maintenance, infrastructure improvements for bridges, and then also using funding for addressing some key bottleneck areas. So 217 and I-5, I-5 at the Rose Quarter, and then expansion of 205 there at Abernathy Bridge as it connects into I-5. So more to come on that. Last night the Park Advisory Board met, and the whole meeting was about the park maintenance piece. not only issues around park maintenance, but the funding piece that Matilda had brought to us in a work session, so they vetted that out more in terms of kind of a Q&A piece for community. And so once they've ironed those pieces out, that will come back to us for conversation and determining what route we want to go. They will have a dollar recommendation as well as a recommendation, or I've asked them to come back with a dollar amount as well as a recommendation on path that they feel that we should take. So more to come on that piece. Attended this morning the Clackamas County Economic Summit. It was a tremendous focus on exports out of Oregon and specifically Clackamas County. It was probably the fastest 2-hour county breakfast I've been to in a while. But it was fascinating on the, I don't have my notes, I'll get those put together for a follow-up meeting here to share with you, but it's amazing the amount of increase in exports that Oregon has seen, specifically Clackamas County, over the last couple of years. So I will bring more on that, but there's, we've all heard the stories of Bob's Red Mill and then Dave's Killer Bread. Dave's Killer Bread increased its international business I think 18% from 2014 to 2016, which then resulted in them being bought for like $280 million. So, you know, and then Bob's Red Mill is another success story. They, in very quick time, have managed to create tremendous growth in their business through exporting internationally. And so, but it was very fascinating. So I will get more information at our next council meeting so that I can share that. So I think that's all that I have captured in my notes for this. I'm sure there's a couple of things I'm missing, but we'll move on. So Councilor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only committee that I have to liaison since our last meeting is the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission met last Monday, last Monday. And there was a minor partition that was approved, creating a separate lot on an existing lot that was for an additional dwelling, an accessory dwelling. That was passed unanimously by the Planning Commission. But there was a more detailed piece to the Planning Commission meeting, which was we had our traffic engineer develop, and I believe this is publicly available. The Planning Commission had asked for some analysis and for some explanation about Canby's current traffic management, traffic capacities, what can be done to deal with traffic. And so there was a presentation put together, and I'll highlight a couple of the pieces. Very, very high-level summary is that in general, Canby is not exceeding our capacities for our roadways, even though traffic is obviously a concern for anybody that's hung up in it. But you know, technically, we're not exceeding our capacities. Our roads are wide enough and carry enough thoroughfare and those kinds of things. There was some conversation about Birch Street and the humps, and there were some satisfied residents with the speed bumps on those streets. And then some of the transportation engineer really covered a lot that the public may want to know, and that's how the arterials and the collector streets and the city streets are designed all sort of have ramifications if you change them. If you put in a turn lane, if you put in a right-of-way, or what do they call the right turn without stopping a yield on the right turn, all these things have all kinds of negative ramifications that may affect, may improve the traffic on one street corner, but then it'll redirect. People will sort of self-adjust, you know, whether it's Google Maps or people's just own knowledge will self-adjust and start going a different direction and causing traffic problems in other directions. So they explained how it's very complex for them to try to plan these things, and they can't always predict them, but the presentation goes through some of the types of tools that they can use to redirect or direct traffic and control traffic. But overall, I think the engineer's perspective seemed to me to be that we've used most of the tools that we have at our disposal, you know, in the existing setup. That was it.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. I compare traffic to water. Both find the path of least resistance to spread and make their way around. So, and as you squeeze one area, the other area expands, and so we've got to be careful. To Councilor Smith's point, and I failed to mention this earlier, we did have a joint work session with the City Council and the Planning Commission to look at, we're currently in a lands need. We're moving towards doing a City of Canby land needs assessment, and so that was our work session this evening, was to iron out a few pieces on that so that we can move forward with getting that completed. So there'll be a ton more on that in the future, but the traffic piece did come up as a conversation of where are we at capacity-wise currently, where will we be if we grow 2% or 2.3% every year over the next 20 years. So it is something that we are watching for sure. So thank you, Councilor. Councilor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. Just three things. First of all, with the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, we have a new chair, Mindy Matakuko, and she's bringing a lot of enthusiasm to it. If you see Liz Bells-Templeman, thank her for years of serving as the chair of the Bike Committee. Our next meeting will be May 30th, 6:30 here. I've been asked by the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. That's the organization, the umbrella organization that's working on redevelopment of the Willamette Falls industrial area for park and mixed use. I've been asked to serve as the Canby's rep to work with the contractor to develop a scope of assessment of economic impact, and I'm not sure what that means, but at least we have a seat at the table for that, and I'm going to do my best to try and make sure that Canby gets its piece of the pie. The Mayor and I have been talking about this for years, that the Willamette Falls project, once it's fully developed and with mixed use, hotel, restaurants, that and business section, that its economic impact is going to lie way beyond Oregon City, and for those communities that plan, that we can get a piece of the economic action as well. So that's my intent. And then finally, our historic preservation board continues to bring in money. They've got another, along with our Main Street manager, brought in a local government grant of nearly $8,000. This will allow us to put together a women's heritage trail and build on the momentum that we've already had with preservation tying into economic development and tourism. Also, there was a cemetery celebration that the Historic Review Commission had, but I'll let somebody who actually made it there on time explain that.
Well, thank you, Councilor. I do appreciate you taking on the piece with the Willamette Falls project, because that we definitely do need a seat at the table, and as have been talking about and will continue to talk about, that is going to have a huge regional ripple effect, and we need to be out in front of it and be proactive and not reactive. And so, thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. Councilor Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, C4 was covered very well by you, so I can skip that and move on to the Canby Adult Center. They had their consultants come in and give a presentation, kind of a status report of where they are on their comprehensive plan project. So it's still kind of a work in process, and I'll have more on that when they actually complete it. There was some discussion also about the effort in seeking a new food service manager, because our lovely Susie, who also cooks at the Legion, she's retiring late summer, so yeah, and we're going to need more gravy makers at the Legion as well. So yeah, it's a lot of people will feel the loss of Susie retiring as going off and traveling or whatever she's going to do with Earl. So we wish her well, but she'll be some big apron to fill there, so to speak. oven mitts, whatever. Number 2 on my list is the Traffic Safety Commission, and Planning Commission Chair John Savory did come and visit them as well and talk about the concern with traffic congestion and going forward. So everybody's kind of on the same page now. Everybody's knowing that this is something to be looked at. There was a citizen concern brought forward to the potential need of a stop sign in the industrial park at First and Hazeldale Way, which, as far as I know, Rick is going to be looking at that. Do you have an update since our meeting? Oh, push the button.
I did actually take a look at the location yesterday. I haven't really formulated an opinion yet. It's an unusual intersection, so I will grab a couple of Public Works staffers, maybe our engineer, to come out and take a better look at it from an engineering and operational perspective. There isn't a simple solution, but I'm sure that there's a better solution than what we have now.
Okay, we'll see. People bring their concerns to the Traffic Safety Commission, and things can happen. So there's that. So thank you for that, and I'll talk to you about another thing that we talked about before. Cedar Street, I don't know where that was. Anyway, and finally, on Traffic Safety Commission front, Dan Leischner has resigned his seat, and we knew that before, but we have found someone to fill his vacancy. So I just wanted to say thank you to Dan again, and we will be apparently putting Julie on a future agenda, I think the first one in June. So she'll be a wonderful addition to the committee. And that's my official liaison report, but finally, my little unofficial report. Breakfast season is over until September, so there's no gravy until September. But yeah, at the Legion. But do watch the Legion Facebook post. I usually put it in Canby Now. When we have other community events, there's lots of ways that the community can be involved with our events. So I'll put that on there, and that's my report.
Great. Council President Dale.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. From the Canby Utility front, just as a reminder, Canby Utility is a public utility. We're a municipal utility. We do not generate our own power. We don't buy it from PGE. We get all of our power, except for a little percentage of green power. All of our power comes from Bonneville Power Administration, and that's the largest cost driver in our power bills. And every 2 years, Bonneville Power decides how much they're going to charge for their power, and they are deciding that right now. The good news is it's a very modest increase. It's about half of what they traditionally ask, so that's good news for all of us in our power bills, and consequently Canby Utility is now starting their rate review process, which will carry them through the summer, and I'll keep you apprised of what it looks like coming towards the fall of what our new power bill rates will be. But so far, good news from the federal government, which is almost hand clap worthy, isn't it? And then finally, just to remind all my fellow councilors that we do have budget committee tomorrow night.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Did you want to give an update on the budget meeting so far?
Want to, or would I be glad to?
Yes. Would you be glad to?
I would be glad to,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor, yes. Canby's budget process is the same as all the other cities in Oregon. Our city administrator is our budget officer, and he is in charge ultimately of delivering a budget to the city council. And so he works for months with, in particular, Julie, our finance director, and meets with all of the department heads in the city, and they do an incredible amount of work to come up with a budget. It is an amazing amount of work that it takes to put together a budget for a city the size of Canby, which we think is a fairly modest one, but it is a lot of work. And then that budget is brought before the budget committee, which is composed of your city council members. The mayor sits on it as an ex officio member, and then we also have an equal number of citizens that are appointed to that committee. And the job of the budget committee then is to review the budget, to ask a lot of questions, tough questions, make sure it adheres to the city's policies, that it all looks like it's doing what it needs to do. And when that budget committee is satisfied, they then will refer it to the city council, and then come June, the city council will have the entire budget and will discuss and vote on it. So that typically in the past few years has taken just a couple meetings to do. So we met last week, we got through the Urban Renewal Agency's budget, and it's been passed on to the Urban Renewal Agency. And we got, well, what, 2/3 of the way through the general fund?
Yeah, about two-thirds of the way through the general fund. We got through the biggest departments, so.
Got through the biggest ones. And tomorrow night, we'll pick up with parks.
Yes.
And we'll finish out the general fund, and then we'll do what we call all the enterprise funds, which is like sewer and other glamorous things like that. And
Glamorous.
hopefully be done with the process tomorrow night, and if not, we'll have one more week at it that will wrap it up. It's open to the public. Everyone's invited. If you don't have anything better to do, come and see us between 6 and 8 o'clock tomorrow night. It is actually kind of fascinating. If you want to hear how money gets spent in the city, budget committee meetings are a great place to learn and listen in on the conversation.
Mr. Chair, is the public meeting, or the public hearing for that is also noticed for tomorrow night, correct? Or is that for the 25th?
We had the public comment last week.
No, I mean on the general fund.
The general fund, Julie?
Was done last week.
Yeah, so we had the public hearing on the state revenue.
So there's
and
no
the
more public comment available,
Right.
even though we haven't gone all the way through the funds?
That is correct. However, the public does have another opportunity for public hearing at the city council meeting.
Okay.
Right.
Because that was kind of my point, is we didn't get all the way through the fund. So what if someone had a comment on the Parks Fund, for example? They can come to the council meeting.
You bet.
There, thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir, for that. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Councilor Hyde, hello.
Hello. So there's good news with the library. The drop box in the alley, you know, there's been finger snapping happening. Well, that's repaired, and my fingers were spared. I went this weekend, I had my family check it out. But yeah, so instead of the metal that was, it was kind of ill-fitting, or it was maybe, I'm not exactly sure, but it was spring-loaded tightly, but it would snap you. It's rubber, and you can, you know, put your hand down gently. But anyway, thank you, City of Canby, for making that fix. The library patrons are glad. And then other events, you know, June 3rd, the Friends of the Library are having their beach, it's the first time they're doing this. It's called a beach book sale. They usually do their 4th of July sale, but they're not doing that anymore because the Independence Day route no longer goes by the library since we moved to this location. So they decided to regroup and do something. It's paperbacks only, I guess, and it's kind of, I don't know, summer themed. Anyway, it's on June 3rd. I don't exactly know what time, but that's what's coming. And so see that on social media and come buy some books to patronize them. And with the school district, I went to a work session. They talked about, it was those meetings are a bit more casual, but we talked about state funding a little bit for education that's happening now, 6th through 8th grade math curriculum adoption, we talked about that. And then the FBLA kids, 5 of them are going to nationals, so their advisor talked about that, which is pretty impressive, and their club is growing. They're like up to 53 members, and that's Future Business Leaders of America, by the way. That's what that stands for, so they're doing really well. And then this was in the Herald. This is a Canby student, though. James Hansen was a 2017, I think it's called the Super Kid Pamplin from Pamplin Media. And I just wanted to give some kudos to him because I know his parents, and they're so proud of him. He started a chess club at Trost. I'm not sure when, a couple years ago, I think. He's a junior right now, I believe. But he just voluntarily started this great club. Lots of kids have been participating. He does summer events for kids. My family's never gone, but maybe we'll be inspired to go. But it sounds like he's just doing a great job and really likes giving back to the community that way. So great job, James. That was nice for him to be publicly recognized. So, yeah. Canby Independence Day, Jamie Stickle and I, the Main Street manager, and Greg Perez met at last. And so we talked a bit. We're on the parade organization crew, and so it's helpful for us to kind of make some progress on how that's going to look. And probably Councilor Spoon already mentioned this in the past, but I wanted to remind. So there's going to be a cutoff date of June 26th for parade entries for applicants that want to be in the parade this year. So make sure if you're thinking your family, your club, your neighborhood, whatever, if you want to be in it, please feel free. We welcome everyone, but make sure that you get your application in by June 26th so that we can review them all. And that's on this, that'll be on the website, the Main Street program, etc. So look there. And then the Lions Club, this is kind of exciting. There's a member who's been a Lions Club member in Canby for 50 years, and they're having a little celebration for him this Saturday, 2 to 4. His name is Bob Kavana. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. But members of the public are welcome to come by and just, you know, kind of tip your hat and say thanks for serving for 50 years. That's pretty cool. So that's 2 to 4 on Saturday for Bob. Yay. And then lastly, there's a new member of our Bike and Ped committee here. That is Shannon. Will you wave? So we're going to approve her soon with the consent agenda, but I wanted to say thanks for stepping up and serving on the Bike and Ped committee. Welcome. Yeah. So yay. And that's all I've got.
Mr. Mayor, question?
Thank you.
Sure.
And yes,
Councilor Hunt, could you, has there been any update? I've heard from actually one of the principals in the elementary schools that they're basically running out of room, and there's some conversation about potentially reopening Ackerman or figuring out which school to start reopening or reusing. Is that, what's the status on that? Is that just in conversation, or?
It's just, it's out there. It's like at some point in future when, I mean, we're not there yet for the student body. Yeah, we haven't reached that point. But you're right. I mean, that will be the question, is when our population grows that much and we have that many students, what are we going to do with Ackerman? But we're happy to still have Ackerman in our back pocket there as a potential school. Yeah. I'll let you know if I find out anything official. How about that?
Thanks.
Okay.
yeah, to that point, I have heard that there is and I believe it's literally titled like an Ackerman task force that's been put together that are working through the numbers and population projections and that kind of thing, is to determine, is it a revamp and reopen kind of a situation, or are we looking down the road, is that another school? What does that look like? So I think there is a small early stage working group kind of already formulating. So yeah.
Good.
So
Thank you.
right. Yeah. Thank you. Councilor Spohn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The cemetery event was fantastic, Greg, and I know Brian was there too, and some kids from Lee did a little talk about the history of Canby, and Philander Lee's great-great-granddaughter or great-granddaughter?
Two greats.
Great-great-granddaughter was there, which was really neat, and she actually told me that they were originally going to name the school after Herman, his son, who was the first mayor of Canby.
Wow.
And Herman's mom was like, no, my husband founded this town. You'll name it after him, which I just thought was like a really funny little story. So that was just a really neat event to see all of the work that was done last summer to restore some of the grave sites of the people that came to our city first, and there's more work to be done out there. So I think that there's going to be, if I recall, you were there, another event maybe this summer to do more restoration work, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
so the group is working on getting another grant to hopefully come back, finish up the remaining monuments and markers to, finish that off. And I think there's plans of eventually, I think they have plans for fencing along the front, just to kind of spruce up even further and revitalize the look of that. So I think that's the plan, is the goal is for this summer.
It was, I drove by it quite often, but I had never stepped foot in the cemetery, and it was really neat to see so many monuments, and the movement kind of for the historical, is it the National Historical Association, is This Place Matters, and so they kind of tied some of that into knowing the importance of your local heritage, which I thought was neat. The 4th of July, I am involved in volunteer organization, and I met with Jamie as well. We're 48 days from 4th of July, so it's coming up very, very fast. And we're going to be looking for volunteers all day. We have a really good idea based on last year of what we needed that we didn't set up for, and what we set up for that we didn't necessarily need. So we're kind of reorganizing and creating some efficiencies. But as an ask, we're looking for organizations or groups that might be willing to help with setup and breakdown. Those are the most laborious tasks and require the most amount of people. And last year, a couple of church organizations kind of came to the aid of the city and helped. So if you are listening or here and you're a part of an organization, a youth group, or some other community organization or group that would be interested in signing up, if we could get a couple of groups to help with both, that would alleviate a lot of burden. It's all volunteer run, and I know that everyone at the city did a lot of work last year, and we're hoping for maybe to be a little bit more organized in terms of having groups chip in for those bigger tasks this year. So if you're aware of any, or if you're part of one and you'd like to participate, the email for volunteer sign up is up and running now, and you can find it, I believe, on the 4th of July page. The page is up now. I also learned today, this is not an official duty, but there's a Wednesday night bike ride at Bikes and More. We got our bikes fixed, so I'm super excited about it. So 6 p.m. on Wednesday nights, you can go to Bikes and More, and Tony does a big group bike outing, and it's people of all skill levels, so you don't have to be a particularly adept cyclist. But it's a pretty neat little community event, and the weather's looking up these days, so that's good. And on a totally personal note, forgive me, I left my son's birthday early to come to the event, so as my son's turning 9 today, and I left birthday early, so happy birthday, Ezra. Thank you, thank you. And also, it's time for bed.
If he's watching this,
He
on his
does.
birthday,
No, he watches. Chris and Bryn and Ezra watch with popcorn.
Oh, my goodness.
Knowing Ezra, I have no doubt about that. And
He's probably playing on his Nintendo DS at the same time, but yes.
you are allowed excused absences from city council meetings
Yeah,
for things like birthdays.
Yeah, I got my cake and I left.
Okay, all right. I don't want everyone
That's
to think I'm a
important.
slave driver and making his birthday parties to be at city council meetings. So,
No.
So we'll tell Ezra thank you. Yes, and happy birthday. Thank you, and happy birthday if you're watching. And tell your dad you get an extra soda pop for watching.
Oh, dear. I think you owe Chris a beer now.
I know, that's going to cost me later.
She just turned the TV off.
Yeah, right. Well, just getting to the good stuff tonight. So, all right, so well, thank you all for your reports. We'll move into the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the minutes of the May 3rd, 2017 City Council regular meeting, the reappointment of Mark Triebwasser to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for a term to end on June 30th, 2020, and the appointment of Shannon Hale to the Bike and Pedestrian Committee for a term to end on June 30th, 2020.
Second.
Motion has been made by Council President Dale and seconded by Councilor Hensley to approve the consent agenda, which include the minutes of the May 3rd, 2017 City Council regular meeting, reappointment of Mark Triebwasser to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for a term to end on June 30th, 2020, and appointment of Shannon Hale to the Bike and Pedestrian Committee for a term to end on June 30th, also in 2020. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That carries 6-0. I know,
Sounds
2020,
so
right?
far away, but it's really not. I know.
Not far away. Great, next on the agenda this evening is a public hearing regarding an update to the master fee schedule. Before we go into that, I will read our public hearing format. The matter presently before the hearing body requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please fill out a yellow public testimony card, like so, and give it to the city recorder, which is Kim there at the end. And at the appropriate time, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and interest in the matter. Those people that are interested in testifying as either proponents or opponents, please indicate your desire to speak by raising your hands at this time. Okay. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. All questions must be directed through the mayor. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access. All written testimony received both for and against shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. We will have a staff report. Questions, if any, by the hearing body or staff. I will then open public hearing for testimony. Proponents, so those that are in favor, will have not more than 3 minutes to address us. Opponents, those opposed, not more than 3 minutes as well. I will then close the public hearing. Any further questions, if any, by the hearing body, and then discussion by the hearing body. A decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure of the hearing? Seeing none, we will go into the staff report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mayor, we have actually some pretty good news this year, I think, overall, relative to the proposed fee changes. As you know, this is a a public hearing and action that you take on an annual basis. And this was established in May of 2010 to be an annual activity, and the underlying intent was to provide clarity and transparency in the establishment and application of fees within the city of Canby. You probably noticed in looking at the fee exhibit that the biggest thing you see looking down the pages is no change. And I think that's reflective of in the aggregate, what you are going to find as you look at the fee recommendations for this year. I'll go down very quickly and identify those areas of change and the specifics of that change. In administration, we are proposing to delete the First Friday marketing program. Fee is simply no longer being charged. Main Street program, we're deleting the Wiener Dog Race fee, as it is also no longer being charged. We're adding a new fee for the car show, and that is $10 with an early bird discount of $8. Under the police department, photos, videos on CD, an increase of $15 to $20 to reflect increased costs for materials and postage. Special event security increasing from $60 to $65 per hour to reflect increased personnel costs. In our court system, city court assessment, we're deleting this because we actually had it included in 2 different locations. So we're deleting the duplication, and the revised fee structure corrects that error. Discovery request fee, we are adding a category for citations, and the new fee would be $5. DUII diversion filing fee is existing in statute, but new in our fee schedule, and it's being added just for consistency, so that what we're trying to do, and you'll notice this year over year, is we identify fees that we're traditionally assessing, but for one reason or another, either there's statutorily imposed, or we've just done it as a matter of tradition, but for some reason haven't been captured in our fee schedule. We're adding those each time we find them. So they may not be new to the community, they may not be new to you, but we want to make sure that we update and are as accurate as possible in reflecting 100% of the fees that are assessed by the city for activities within the city. The failure to comply suspension fee, name change. The fee was formerly listed on the schedule as a DMV suspension reinstatement, but it's been renamed to more accurately reflect the fee assessed when the court suspended a driver's license. The failure to appear at, it's not trail fee, it's trial fee, is a new fee, $100. This fee has been in existence under court order, but it's being added, as I indicated earlier, to the fee schedule for consistency purposes. It offsets the cost of jury and witness fees when the defendant does not appear. Parking ticket late fees, it's a new fee. It's been in existence under court order. Again, we're codifying it. The range is $15 to $25. We're deleting fee for damaged items. Checkout bags and microfilm readers can no longer be damaged because they're no longer available to the public. They're simply items that we don't carry. A new damaged item, as we are pursuing our RFID labeling, we have proposed in a $1 replacement cost charge for lost or damaged labels. As you know, they cost us quite a bit of money to both purchase and to apply, so want to recover just the cost of replacing those. Public Works, the labor rate increased from $45 to $50 per hour. This simply reflects the increased personnel costs. Mower rate, this is a new fee at $5 an hour, and essentially what we've established this because we use the mower that is a public works mower for other activities within the city's system, most commonly within our cemetery because we don't have a dedicated mower to the cemetery. So rather than purchasing a mower and having to maintain 2 mowers, we are simply establishing an hourly rate so that we can appropriately reimburse the Public Works Department, which is one fund, by the cemetery, which is a general fund operation. System development charges, transportation and parks increases. This is an inflation adjustment based on the engineering news record, which tracks the cost of building materials over time and is the indicated inflation monitor that we use for STC inflation adjustment. The recommended increase is 3.9%, and I didn't try to identify each of those. They're in the summary, and you can track them because you'll note that it's 3.9% greater than all of the fees that we'd established for the 2016-17 fiscal year. The planning increase, we had not increased our planning fees over the last 5 years. We'd been in such a period of economic downfall, or downturn. Some people would say downfall as well. Economic downturn that we're taking a very conservative approach. We didn't increase the fees. We are recommending that we increase the cost with actually a pretty nominal rate at 2.1%, which simply reflects last year's CPI and does not try to recapture the cost increases associated with the 5 years previous to the 17-18 increase. We have a minor variance fee. This is a new fee. The proposal is $120 being added because the service was frequently required, but we did not have a designated fee previously. Swim Center is increasing their fees principally to offset the cost of increased swim center staff and most notably part-time staff costs. The fees would go from $3.50 to $4 for city residents and from $5.25 to $6 for non-city residents, and then the out-of-school district school programs would increase from $85 to $100. So if Molalla came in with $100 per hour, so if Molalla came in for a swim lessons, series of swim lessons, they'd be paying $100 per